y'all. I'm Karen Morgan, and this is the Purple Bike Podcast. Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about the year 2010. I think that was the first year I started saying 2010 instead of 2010. The cool stuff that happened in 2010 were the Winter Olympics were held in Vancouver, Canada, and Wayne Gretzky lit the cauldron. Some of the American athletes that won gold medals were Apollo Anton, Shaun White, and Bode Miller. In 2010, Lady Gaga wore her meat dress to the MTV Video Music Awards. I don't think it was made out of real meat, but there were a lot of people talking about it. In 2010, the video game Angry Birds came out. At the time, the swine flu epidemic was happening, so the people at Angry Birds decided to make pigs be the enemies of the Angry Birds. And you could play Angry Birds on your iPad. Yes, in 2010, the first iPad was released. And since then, Apple has sold more than 500 million iPads. And in 2010, I did my first triathlon. So I had never done one before and wanted to try it. So I signed up for a local sprint tri called Try for a Cure, which is here in Maine, and it's women only. And they raise funds for Maine Cancer Foundation. I had a great experience. And here are the things I learned during my first triathlon. Number one, the water in the ocean in Maine is very, very cold, even in July. So instead of warming up as you swim, you just keep getting colder. Number two, I like swimming. I like biking. I do not like running. And number three, in an all-women triathlon, everybody cheers each other on. It's a really great experience. And during the swim, if somebody accidentally kicks your goggles off your head, they actually say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Good for you. Keep going." The number one song in 2010 was TikTok by Kesha. The number two song was by Lady Antebellum.
It's a quarter after one. I'm all alone and I need you now. Said I wouldn't call, but I lost all control and I need you now.
We also had songs from Owl City.
You would not believe your eyes if 10 million fireflies lit up the world as I fell asleep. 'Cause they fill the open air and leave teardrops everywhere. You'd think me rude, but I would just stand there. You gotta cover up, I gotta let them be. So let me be.
Maroon 5. And LaRue. Now, I think Ellie Jackson from LaRue sounds a lot like Alison Moyet from Yaz, from the Upstairs at Eric's album, which was a very 80s album, which I loved a whole lot. Here's Yaz.
I'll turn around when I heard the sound of footsteps on the floor. Loud, just like addiction. Now I'm hooked on you. I need some time to get it right. Your love's gonna see me through. Can't stop now, don't you know? I'm never gonna let you go. Don't go.
We had some good TV shows back in 2010, a couple of reality shows to start. We had Storage Wars debuted that year. Here's how the reality show Storage Wars came about. When rent isn't paid on a storage locker for 3 months in California, the contents can be sold by an auctioneer. Now the show follows these people who are professional buyers who bid on these storage lockers. They give them like a 5-minute look-see to kind of look at what's in there, but they can't go in there and they can't touch anything. And then they just have to start bidding on stuff. So it could be great, or it could be just a whole bunch of empty boxes. It's kind of like Monty Hall. Another very entertaining reality show was My Strange Addiction. This show had people that had unusual compulsive behaviors, like Tempest, who eats detergent up to 7 times a day, not to mention the soap she eats in the shower. Or Adele, who has been eating couch cushions for 20 years. Oh, when feelings of stress and anxiety come up, Adele literally stuffs them back down with couch cushions. And then there's Josh, who enjoys a glass of champagne, not for the bubbly contents, but for the satisfying crunch of glass as he bites into it. Over the past 4 years, Josh has consumed more than 100 glasses and 250 light bulbs. Good Lord, let's move on to the scripted shows. My 2 favorite shows that debuted in 2010 were Boardwalk Empire, which was on HBO. It was created by Terrence Winter, and it was set in Atlantic City during the Prohibition era of the 1920s. Steve Buscemi starred as Nucky Thompson. Now, Winter created the show because he was inspired by Nelson Johnson's nonfiction book called Boardwalk Empire, The Birth, High Times, and Corruptions of Atlantic City, which was about the historical criminal kingpin Enoch L. Johnson. The pilot episode of Boardwalk Empire was directed by Martin Scorsese, and the series received 57 Primetime Emmy Award nominations, including 2 for Outstanding Drama Series. It won 20 Emmys altogether. And the other show that I liked that started in 2010 was The Walking Dead, and it is still going. They're going to end it next year after its 11th season. The Walking Dead is based on the comic book series by Robert Kirkman, Tony Moore, and Charlie Adlard. It has a big ensemble cast, and they are survivors of the zombie apocalypse. They're just trying to stay alive under a constant threat of attack from the zombies, which they call walkers, and other humans who are horrible. And most of the filming happens near Sonoma, Georgia. And it's really crazy to be from Georgia and watch this show because sometimes every now and then I kind of recognize an abandoned old gas station. Or at least all the roads kind of look familiar, like I'm going home.
When we're together, gray skies are clear.
There were a lot of great movies in 2010. Number 1 at the box office was Toy Story 3. It also won Oscars for Best Animated Film and Best Original Song for We Belong Together, that was written, composed, and performed by our good friend Randy Newman.
We belong together. We belong together. Yes, we do.
The big Oscar winner of 2010 was The King's Speech. This was a great film. It received 12 Oscar nominations, more than any other film that year, and it won for Best Film, Best Director for Tom Hooper, Best Actor for Colin Firth, and Best Original Screenplay for David Seidler. In this film, Colin Firth plays King George VI, who was Queen Elizabeth's father. He had a stammer, so he went to see a man named Lionel Logue, who was an Australian speech and language therapist played by the very talented Geoffrey Rush. Helena Bonham Carter played the Queen Mother, and both she and Geoffrey Rush also received an Oscar nomination. Other Oscars for 2010 movies went to Natalie Portman for Best Actress in her performance in The Black Swan. Natalie Portman plays a ballerina who comes completely unhinged. This movie totally weirded me out, but I have to say that I was pretty impressed with Natalie Portman, who did her own dancing. Other than that, it was super creepy. Best Supporting Actor to Christian Bale and Best Supporting Actress to Melissa Leo for their roles in the movie called The Fighter. And Best Adapted Screenplay went to Aaron Sorkin for The Social Network, which also won an Oscar for Best Original Score. The Kids Are All Right received 4 Academy Award nominations, including 1 for Best Picture, and it also won the Golden Globe. Annette Bening, who won the Golden Globe for Best Actress, and Julianne Moore play a couple who are raising kids who want to find their birth father, who is played by Mark Ruffalo. Inception, with Leonardo DiCaprio, won 4 Academy Awards for Best Cinematography, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. It was also nominated for 4 more, including Best Picture. Inception was a very interesting movie about people going into the subconscious minds of other people. It's one of those you just kind of have to see. Other big movies in 2010 included Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Now, this was the first movie of 2 parts based on J.K. Rowling's book, which was the 7th of the books in the book series. So this movie was the 7th film in the film series. Deathly Hallows Part 1, or Harry Potter Film 7, was the 3rd highest grossing film of 2010. It received 2 Oscar nominations for Best Art Direction and Best Visual Effects. There were some other sequel series movies. We had Iron Man 2, which was the 2nd Iron Man film, obviously. We had the Twilight Saga Eclipse, which was the 3rd installment of the Twilight series, and we had Shrek Forever After, which was the 4th installment in the Shrek film series. All these sequel numbers are confusing, so if you need any help, just shoot me an email at karen@karenmorgan.com. I will help you. In 2010, we also had Despicable Me. Now, this was the first film in this film series that centered on Gru, who was a supervillain voiced by Steve Carell, and his yellow-colored minions. There would later be 2 sequels to this movie, Despicable Me 2 and Despicable Me 3, as well as 2 spin-off prequels, The Minions and the upcoming Minions Rise of Gru. The Despicable Me franchise is the highest grossing animated film franchise and the 15th highest grossing film franchise of all time. It has grossed over $3.7 billion around the world. That's a whole lot of rich minions. In 2010, we also had How to Train Your Dragon. This was another first film in a film series from DreamWorks Animation, and it was based loosely on the children's books by Cressida Cowell. They had How to Train Your Dragon, How to Train Your Dragon 2, and How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. Why couldn't they just make it be 3? Each of the How to Train Your Dragon movies was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, and the first one was nominated for Best Original Score. Other kids' movies from 2010 were Megamind from DreamWorks, and this had the voices of Will Ferrell and Brad Pitt. We had Tangled, which was an animated Disney movie about Rapunzel. We also had Alice in Wonderland from Walt Disney, directed by Tim Burton and starring Johnny Depp. I don't know, I thought this was kind of creepy, but I don't really like Alice in Wonderland because I thought that was creepy too. There was Diary of a Wimpy Kid, based on the book series by Jeff Kinney. We loved these books in our house, and this film was the first installment of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series, followed by 3 sequels. In 2010, we also had Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, which is based on a book series that my kids enjoyed. And we had the movie called The Tooth Fairy, written by our friends Lowell Gans and Babaloo Mandel, who wrote Parenthood and Splash and all those other movies we've talked about. This movie starred Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, as the Tooth Fairy. Some grown-up movies from 2010 that were funny, starting with Grown Ups. That was an Adam Sandler film with a funny ensemble cast that also included Patty Ross, who is a very, very funny stand-up comic from Boston. We had Dinner for Schmucks with Steve Carell, Paul Rudd, Zach Galifianakis, and Jermaine Clement. This was a very funny movie about a guy that makes little statues out of roadkill. We had Hot Tub Time Machine with John Cusack and Rob Corddry and Craig Robinson. There was Date Night with Steve Carell and Tina Fey. We had Morning Glory with Rachel McAdams, Harrison Ford, and Diane Keaton, all about the morning TV business. We had Get Him to the Greek with Jonah Hill and Russell Brand, and Easy A with Emma Stone, some grown-up movies that weren't so funny. Let's start with a movie called Frozen. Nope, this is not the Frozen you're thinking about that has the really great songs. This is about people that get stuck up on a chairlift on a ski mountain and they're freezing to death overnight. It's basically the movie Open Water, but on a chairlift at a ski resort. It's super scary because it could actually happen. Other grown-up movies that were less scary were Robin Hood, directed by Ridley Scott and starring Russell Crowe as Robin Hood. We had Secretariat from Walt Disney Pictures that had Diane Lane and John Malkovich, a really nice movie about the Triple Crown winning horse Secretariat. We had The Town that was directed and written by Ben Affleck about bank robbers in Boston who, thankfully, for the most part, have the correct accent. Okay, so now we're at my favorite movies from 2010. The first one is Red, which was the first of 2 films in an action comedy film. It was based on a comic book series by Warren Ellis and Cully Hammer, published by DC Comics. The film stars Bruce Willis, Morgan Freeman, John Malkovich, Mary Louise Parker, Helen Mirren, and Carl Urban. It was about a group of retired secret agents who were extremely underestimated. Red stands for retired and extremely dangerous. Okay, now my favorite movie of 2010 got terrible reviews, but I still loved it. It's called Leap Year, about a woman who goes to Ireland to propose to her boyfriend on Leap Day, when supposedly tradition says that men can't refuse a woman's proposal for marriage. So Amy Adams plays the woman who is dating this schmarmy doctor played by Adam Scott, and she flies over to Ireland to ask him to marry her. Along the way, she hires an Irish innkeeper played by Matthew Good to take her to Dublin, and surprise, they fall in love. And it's super cheesy and super expected, and it just made me super in love with Matthew Good. So I stand by my choice for Leap Year as my favorite movie of 2010, and I stand by Matthew Good as my celebrity crush still today. So all in all, 2010 was a really fun year. We were watching a lot of movies. We were watching The Walking Dead. We were watching people eat sofa cushions on My Strange Addiction. I was crushing on Matthew Good and also training for triathlons. Join me next time when we talk about the year 2011. When Prince William and Kate Middleton got married, the Harry Potter film series came to an end, and the movie Bridesmaids made a whole lot of people laugh. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Y'all have a great day. Hey, this is Karen. I hope you're enjoying the Purple Bike podcast. For more information about the Purple Bike, go to thepurplebike.com, and also make sure to check out my website, which is karenmorgan.com, where you can subscribe to my monthly newsletter that has announcements about upcoming comedy shows, some really cool giveaways, and other fun stuff. So go to karenmorgan.com and sign up today.